This is an exploration of my affirmational injunction to unite, ascribed to the 8th sephirot of the Kabalistic Tree of Life, Hod. Hod has always remained a bit of a mystery sephirot to me. I've never really got my head around its full implication or meaning or subtlety. And I kind of was sort of puzzling about why I ascribed the word unite to this sephirot, and I thought of I basically thought of the triplicities of the astrological signs, which is, say, a water of air, which is ascribed to Sagittarius. And Sagittarius, or water of air, is described as the rainbow. And from this fact, I contemplated Isaac Newton's famous experiment with breaking up white light or refracting white light through a prism, and you get the colours of the rainbow refracted through the prism, and end up on a sort of white screen or white wall opposite the where the refraction has occurred. And Richard of York gained battles in vain, which is red, orange, green, blue, indigo, and violet. That's how you remember the rainbow colours, by the way. So in a way, you start with unity of white light, and then you split it up into the various colours of the spectrum, according to the angle at which the vibration of the colour hits the refractive surface of the prism. It's, or you could think of it the other way. You start with pigments of all the colours of the rainbow, and you mix them all together, and it's said that you get a white pigment. Or you put the colours of the rainbow on a card, a circle, and you spin the circle very fast, and you end up getting the image, a white image, spinning around. So that there's disunity and unity, or rather there's division and then there is unity afterwards, which is a very very important concept in alchemy, solve et coagula. Solve et coagula is the kind of a primary an important formula in alchemy, the solve is the condensation or distillation of separation of various elements or conditions, and then coagula is the bringing together of those. So the opposite of distillation, condensation. I think I've got that right anyway. And if I haven't, forgive me, because it's something along those lines anyway. Hod is a very mysterious sephirot as far as I'm concerned. But I suppose the word unite involves a very positive action. You're doing something positive to unite ideas, people, conditions, situations, even countries in a political sense. So you're being quite positive in the pursuance of this policy of uniting everything. Whereas Yesod, which is the 9th sephirot of the Kabalistic Tree of Life, to which I've ascribed accept, is very passive. The 7th sephirot of the Kabalistic Tree of Life, Netzach, is a mixture of passive and active, because in joy implies passive enjoyment, but also active enjoyment as well. So there's an active element to the idea of enjoyment. But Unite is purely positive. So we have Hod positive, Yesod negative, and Netzach as a mixture of positive and negative, which you would think would be the opposite, because if Yesod is on one pillar and Netzach is on the other pillar, you think you'd have positive and negative, and then Yesod would be in the middle pillar, combining positive and negative. So a little bit counterintuitive there, unless my attributions are wrong. And it should be Netzach should be accept, and Yesod should be enjoy. But it didn't seem to be right according to the Western magical tradition of ascribing spheres. So Yesod is a sphere of the moon, and Netzach is sphere of Venus, and Hod is the sphere of Mercury. But it could be that those correspondences are wrong. And that I don't really know how I set about checking that, really, apart from being taking on a huge magical project in order to test whether those correspondences are correct, or whether Yesod should be the sphere of the planet Venus, and Netzach should be the sphere of Mercury. So I don't really know enough about Kabbalah to be able to confirm or deny that, really. But nevertheless, it doesn't really matter. We're on Hod, and we're thinking about the rainbow, and we're thinking about distillation and condensation, dividing things. Things are divided for the joy of union, is another concept. So without two elements, A and B, you can't have an attraction between them, which is what love is. So you can't have the joy of union unless you've got two elements or people or situations to bring together in a joyful union, which is logical. So that was kind of my thinking along those lines. And then my spelling has gone to pot here. And then I was thinking about the left side and the right hand side of the brain. As you know, there's this sort of a kind of, I don't know if it's psychobabble or psychology which you get out of a cornflake packet, but there's supposed to be a left hand side and the right hand side activity of the brain in many people. I was thinking, and there's supposed to be this kind of thing. I saw this test on Facebook with colours, and if you're right hand active, you're supposed to see one combination of colours, and if you're left hand, you're supposed to see another combination of colours. Well, I actually saw both at the same time, so that means my right hand and left hand brain are pretty much acting together. So that was kind of interesting. And then I was thinking of this as being a good and a bad thing. For example, I'm pretty volatile, and I go from rationality to extreme irrationality. And I'm sort of restless between these polar opposites, and I have discontent. And I'm sort of one foot in one camp and one foot in the other, but kind of split between them. When I'm with rational people, I kind of rebel against them and want irrationality, and when I'm with irrational people, I want to be rational. So there's always a bit of a restless rebellion against whatever situation I'm in, or whatever group of people I'm with. And I had a dream about that as well. It's quite interesting that I wasn't happy with any group of people, because they were either too irrational or too rational. So it's kind of like, the porridge is too cold or too hot. I want it just right in the middle. Perhaps I'm a natural Buddhist after all. So that's a kind of problem that I have if the two halves of my brain are equally active, as I kind of swoosh from one extreme to the other. And I was thinking then, of course, of two things really: yoga, which is derived from the root verb yuj, which means to yoke two oxen together. So there's a unity there between mind and body, between polarities of various kinds, and you bring them together within the discipline of yoga. And there are 8 different disciplines of yoga to choose from in order to accomplish that. So that's kind of an interesting point about Unite. Also the idea, though, of 2 equals 0, which is another alchemical formula or magical formula where you unite positive and negative of equal value, and they self-annihilate so you get 0. But the idea is that this 0 is not total 0. It's a condition which approaches 0, and yet there is something strange and mysterious left, which isn't quite annihilation, but is a sort of potentiality from which all things may arise. So 2 equals 0 is really a symbolic language of the creation of potentiality for all things to rise, so that in the Kabbalah we get the idea that things come from nothing. The idea that, but it isn't exactly nothing. It's approaching nothing, but it's not quite a nothing. And because it's not quite a nothingness, it's a somethingness. So within nothingness, you get this little point or bindu. So if you have this big 0 sign, but it's because it's not quite 0, you've got this little point here. And this little point here is the potential from which everything arises, including the entire cosmos. So that's another little thing. And then I had the idea of this thing about political unity. The European project and federalism generally. It wants to sort of homogenize everything. It wants to bring everybody together, as the Soviet Union tried to do in the Eastern Bloc countries. And to sort of strangle diversity, ethnic and language and cultural and religious diversity, sweep it all under the carpet, pretend it doesn't exist, and we're all united brothers of Europe. Doesn't work, as we all can see. And indeed, homogenization is not a good idea. And monopolization is an even worse idea when we look at it economically. What we need is unity through diversity. And in economic terms, you need a strong economy is a competitive one, in which there are many different choices for the consumer to make. And if the consumer does not have enough choice, then you have stagnation, you have corruption, you have price fixing. And generally speaking, projects to unite man as a brotherhood of man, it's only a very superficial project, and it neglects the nuances of diversity to its own detriment. So it kind of implodes on itself. So this whole idea of the brotherhood of man and having one world is fraught with problems, practical and theoretical and philosophical and cultural and religious and language, and it just you need to find a different way. So at the same time, you have a desire for unity. There must be a respect for separation, and so in this world of the demiurge, you have separation and unity sort of coexisting side by side. So I suppose there's a unity between separation and unity, if that makes any philosophical sense to you at all. And that's an intriguing thought. So all these sort of disparate ideas that I had about the sephirot yod and this word unite, which is an injunction, you've got to unite everything on sight, seems to be seems to have its own contradiction, which is interesting. It's self-contradictory to an extent. And when you try and unite ideas and try and unite religious ideas and say everything is the same religion, you get into trouble there as well. And if you try and say that we've all come from one sort of cultural type, as it were, in sort of Stone Age or pre-Stone Age type, where religion existed, then that's a bit of a generalization. So you can overgeneralize when you try to unite ideas and people and situations, and you try to homogenize basically, and it fails. The project doesn't work, and then people get really cross with each other, and you actually create more disunity as a result of trying to unite people than you would if you just let people be naturally diverse, and as they have evolved to be that, due to various different situations and historical change and all that kind of stuff. So I have these disparate thoughts, and it's like as if I don't have a unified theory to explain everything in magic and alchemy, and in life, the universe, and everything. I don't have there is injunction to unite things, but I don't really see how I can do that. I just have these very disparate thoughts, which sort of work on different levels at different times, on the individual level and the collective level, and are sort of contentious issues on different levels. And I don't seem to sort of have a kind of a unified view of the Kabbalah, for that matter. But perhaps that is its greatest strength, that the Kabbalah doesn't demand a unified view of itself. The person studying the Kabbalah, looks for unity, but doesn't find it. And I suppose, we look for the grail of unification, but we don't find it. But what we find instead is something even more powerful than what it was that we decided that we should look for. And that arises sort of naturally out of our quest. So that could be good, and that could be the positive thing that this word "unite" actually suggests. And there's even a trade union called Unite in Britain. It's a union of council workers, I think, and hospital porters and people like that. Lots of different little trade unions were united together to create one big trade union. And I think actually that in that case it was pretty successful. I think Unite has been quite a successful trade union. But other people strongly disagree with me and say that Unite is a pathetic, pale reflection of what a trade union should be, and that they don't care about their members at all, and it's all huff and puff and all talk, and no action to improve working conditions and pay levels of the people that Unite is supposed to represent. So there you go. Again, homogenization, unification. Sometimes it can be a really bad thing. So why then is there this affirmational injunction to unite? Why must it be a good thing to keep bringing everything together? And then finally, the final point, another disparate little point, is this thing about the lovers or the brothers, which is a tarot card, where you bring together yin and yang, you bring together male and female, or femininity and masculinity, and or any situation or any chemical substances, and basically you need a catalyst. So in the card, there's the man and the woman, the king and the queen, femininity, masculinity, or the brothers, which is a sort of a gay interpretation of this card. And you need something to bring together, and there's this sort of hooded figure, who is God, bringing together the lovers, And in chemical terms, this is called a catalyst. In most biological chemical reactions, they're very complex, and normally things don't work. But what you've got to do you've got to have a thing called a catalyst, which basically brings together two substances or two very complex substances with many different molecules, and this catalyst kind of brings them together like a sort of broker. It kind of handshakes between the two complex molecules in order to create a united molecule. And catalysts are very common in biological systems, without which catalysts, many biological systems wouldn't work at all, including the basic one of respiration. That wouldn't work, so we wouldn't exist without the action of catalysts on many different levels. So, in a sense, in order to unite, you have to act as a catalyst between two people or situations or communities or whatever, and you're a catalyst or a broker between these two, and you're bringing them together, because otherwise they wouldn't come together, because they couldn't see the wood for the trees. But as a catalyst or a broker or someone who's an arbitrator, you can see the bigger picture, which sometimes is a really good idea if these communities or people would otherwise fight each other all the time. But nevertheless, when adversarial groups, people, communities do come together and there is a fight, very often the energy of the adversarial algorithm can actually be a positive thing. So sometimes you're uniting people, situations, communities that don't want to be united, but that in itself can be a catalyst for positive social change and individual change. So as you can tell, this whole issue of unite is in fact nuanced and complex, and it is worth sort of contemplating on. And perhaps it seems that I know more about Hod than I thought I did, more about unity than I thought I knew, and which is encouraging. And I think that what can be said. It's nice that there is a tendency towards unity, even though there is also a tendency for things to be disunited and split apart. And in nature, we see things coming together and splitting apart, in a sort of almost a kind of cosmic rhythm of plus and minus, or one and zero, in a sort of in a binary kind of way. And all this, of course, all this is definitely partaking of the lower worlds and the demiurge, and so we must think that in terms of a transcendental cosmos, maybe the word unite would not actually apply to a transcendental situation or realm or God or whatever. I suppose there would be no need to say unite, because there would already be unity. But somehow I also think there is a transcendent quality even to unity. There's something beyond unity, which I suppose encompasses separation as well as unity, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of like the sort of Gnostic connection with this, anyway. But certainly, it's an interesting word on which to contemplate, and an interesting sephirot to meditate upon.